sometimes the quietest people in the room hold the loudest truths. And sometimes, all it takes is one stolen idea to wake a sleeping giant. I never planned on becoming the villain in someone else's success story, but when the owner's spoiled, arrogant son laughed in my face and stole the innovation I'd worked on for 7 years, something inside me snapped. Not in rage, but in clarity. I finally saw what the company really was, a place where merit died, and nepotism reigned. And that day, I realized I had one final card to play, one I had kept buried, locked away, waiting for the moment it was truly needed. I had the patent. And no one, not even the golden child of the CEO, knew it. The project started innocently enough. A new product line, something fresh, something bold. I'd been researching it long before the company cared. I worked on prototypes at home, refining the tech, making it efficient, scalable, elegant. I held off showing anyone until I was completely sure, until not even the harshest engineer could poke a hole in it. When I finally presented the idea to the executive team, the room went quiet. Not the kind of quiet where people are unimpressed, no, it was the kind where they tried not to look too excited. The owner leaned forward, elbows on the table. The CFO adjusted her glasses. The engineers nodded slowly, impressed despite themselves. And then, of course, he walked in. Daniel. The CEO's son. The kind of man who was born on third base and genuinely believed he'd hit a triple. He didn't understand the innovation, he barely understood half the processes our company relied on, but he loved to hover in important meetings pretending to be a visionary. He stood behind his father's chair, looked at my diagrams, and smirked. "This is cute," he said. "But I've been thinking about something similar anyway. Might as well merge your little idea into the direction I'm taking things." Little idea. The words hit harder than they should have. The owner chuckled, not dismissively, but with a fondness reserved for a son who could do no wrong. "You two can work together on this," he said. Except Daniel had no intention of working with me. He planned to work over me. Within a week, he presented my entire design to the board, without me there. Same components. Same diagram. Same phrasing. He even copied my color scheme. He didn't even bother to understand the engineering, his pitch focused on vision and market disruption. And the board, predictably, ate it up. He laughed when I confronted him privately. Actually laughed. "Oh, come on," he said. "Do you really think the company needs your name on this? Relax. You'll get some credit somewhere. Maybe a footnote in the internal memo." A footnote. 7 years of work reduced to a footnote in a memo about his achievement. So I did something I'd hoped never to do. I reached into my file drawer. And I pulled out the documents I'd kept safe for years. The patent, filed under my name, with my signatures, with the original blueprints time-stamped long before this company even considered innovation in this area. Not provisional. Not pending. Fully approved. Legally airtight. And I waited. Daniel announced a massive launch event. Flashy marketing videos, banners with his face, the whole 9 yards. Investors were invited. Press was invited. It was going to be his legacy, his first big win as the incoming leader of the company. I showed up that morning in my usual quiet way, coffee in hand, badge around my neck. No one suspected anything. Why would they? I wasn't the kind of person who made scenes. But the thing about patents, they don't wait. And they don't negotiate. An hour before the event began, the company's legal department received a cease and desist filed by me, the rightful owner of the technology. Along with the patent documents. Along with a notice of infringement. Along with a demand that they halt use of my intellectual property immediately. Chaos erupted. The CEO stormed into the conference room red-faced, yelling into his phone. Lawyers scrambled down the hallway. Daniel looked like a child caught cheating on an exam, wide-eyed, sweating, stuttering excuses no one believed. He kept saying, "But it was my idea. I presented it. I pitched it." And the lawyer simply asked, "Do you have proof you created it?" He didn't. Because he hadn't. 20 minutes later, the launch was canceled. Press escorted out. Investors furious. Reputation tarnished. Millions spent on marketing, gone. All because he thought he could steal from the quiet guy. The CEO called me in privately. Tried to negotiate. Tried to intimidate. Tried to guilt-trip me. "Think about the company," he said. "Think about your future here." "My future isn't here," I replied calmly. "Not anymore." I stood, placed my badge on the table, and handed over my resignation. And because irony is sweet, I left him with the same words his son once used on me. "It's cute," I said. "But you might want to come up with your own ideas next time." I walked out of the building, the cold air feeling lighter than it had in years. Behind me, the empire of nepotism crumbled. My innovation, was still mine. My dignity was intact. And Daniel? He learned that you can steal someone's spotlight, steal their credit, even steal their presentation. But you can't steal a patent. The following week was strangely peaceful. For the first time in years, I slept without replaying office politics in my mind. No passive-aggressive emails. No last-minute urgent tasks. No pretending to smile when someone else took the praise. Just silence, the kind that feels like oxygen. But peace is a way of giving you space to reflect, and that's when the calls started. First, the CEO. Then the COO. Then Daniel, 3 missed calls in a row, followed by a text that said only, "We need to fix this." Fix this. As if I had broken anything. Their company had built an entire product launch on a foundation of stolen work. Investors were demanding answers. One of the major partners threatened to pull out entirely after learning the tech wasn't legally theirs to use. The legal department advised pausing all innovation-related projects until ownership issues were resolved. The board was furious. And Daniel? He was suddenly nowhere on social media. His normally loud, brag-filled accounts went silent overnight. No new posts. No behind-the-scenes stories. No launch day celebrations. His big moment had disappeared like smoke. Meanwhile, I had plenty of options. A surprising number of them. Word spreads fast in the tech world. My patent became public record the moment enforcement started, and other companies noticed. One particular firm, a direct competitor, reached out within days. They had been trying to develop similar technology but couldn't solve a key efficiency issue. The issue I had already solved. They invited me in for a meeting. When I walked into their glass conference room, their lead engineer greeted me with a handshake that felt like genuine respect, something I had rarely felt at my old job. "We've followed your work from afar," he said. "It's genius. We'd like to discuss licensing, or a partnership." Your call. My call. After years of being told what I should do, being given scraps of credit, suddenly I had control. I listened. I asked questions. I didn't rush. For once, they waited for my decisions. But just as I was getting ready to move forward, a message popped into my email inbox from my previous company's lawyer, a formal request to meet. To resolve internal misunderstandings, they claimed. I almost ignored it, but curiosity won. When I arrived at the office, they ushered me into a boardroom where the owner sat looking older than he had a month ago. Daniel sat beside him, unusually quiet, his confidence deflated. The CEO cleared his throat. "We'd like to make things right," he said, forcing the words out like they tasted bitter. "We want you back. Lead the innovation department. Full authority. Double your previous salary." It was tempting, for a moment. Not the job, but the irony of it. The same man who once told me ideas weren't owned, that the company came first, was now begging for the man he'd undervalued to return. But then I looked at Daniel. The son. The reason the company was rotting from the inside. And I realized nothing had changed, not really. "What about him?" I asked, nodding toward Daniel. The CEO stiffened. "Daniel is still part of the leadership track." Of course he was. That was my answer. "I appreciate the offer," I said calmly. "But I'm not coming back. I don't work under people who steal from me." Daniel's jaw tightened. "You ruined everything," he muttered. I smiled, not out of triumph, but because the truth was finally visible. "No, Daniel. You ruined everything. I just protected what was mine." I stood, nodded politely to the stunned CEO, and walked out. They didn't call again. A month later, I signed a partnership deal with the competitor, one that put me in complete creative control of the tech I had spent years perfecting. I built a small team of engineers who respected me. We refined the design, improved it, and prepared it for a launch the world wouldn't see coming. No stolen credit. No nepotism. No fake smiles. Just real work, with real ownership. And on launch day, our launch day, the tech community buzzed with excitement. Investors praised the innovation. Articles highlighted my name as the original creator. Competitors studied the design in awe. As I stood backstage before going on to speak, my phone buzzed again. A single message. From Daniel. "Congrats. You won." I stared at the words for a long moment. Then I locked my phone and stepped out under the bright lights, greeted by applause. Because it wasn't about winning. It was about reclaiming the power I'd given away for far too long. I didn't destroy his future. I protected my own. And for the first time since this entire ordeal began, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Free. The applause washed over me like a tide, warm, steady, grounding. I had always imagined that success would feel loud, triumphant, overwhelming, yet in that moment, standing on the stage with the lights dimming and the audience waiting, it felt strangely peaceful. Like I had finally stepped into the life I was supposed to have all along. I delivered my talk, clear, confident, and unapologetically proud. Not arrogant, not boastful, just honest. I talked about innovation, the years of research, the hurdles, the breakthroughs. I talked about how true progress requires patience, resilience, and integrity. And when I finished, the room stood for me. That moment could have been enough. For most people, it would have been. But life rarely ends neatly. Sometimes old stories circle back, not to haunt you, but to show you just how far you've walked. 2 weeks after the launch, I received an unexpected call. Not from Daniel. Not from his father. But from one of their board members, Margaret Caldwell, a woman known for being brutally intelligent and allergic to nonsense. "We need to talk," she said, without any greeting. I met her at a quiet cafe near the river. She arrived early, sitting with perfect posture, glasses perched low on her nose as she reviewed a folder filled with documents. She slid it across the table without a word. Inside were reports, statements, and one particularly damning email thread, all related to Daniel. He had been caught in more than just stealing my idea. He had rerouted funds from the innovation budget to cover marketing costs for projects that never existed. He inflated performance numbers. He manipulated internal reports. He misled the board for years, hidden behind the shield of being the CEO's son. Margaret watched my expression carefully. "We've been auditing everything since your patent claim," she said. "Your situation opened the door. Or rather, ripped it off its hinges." I nodded slowly. "So, what do you want from me?" She clasped her hands together. "We want you to consult with us. Temporarily. Help restructure our innovation division. Help fix what Daniel broke." I couldn't help but laugh, not mockingly, but in disbelief. Life had a sense of humor, apparently. "You don't need me," I said. "You need accountability." "Exactly," she replied. "Which is why Daniel is being removed from any leadership path. Effective immediately." The words lingered in the air between us, heavy and final. Removed. The golden child had finally run out of gold. "What about his father?" I asked. Her expression didn't change. "The board is voting on replacing him as CEO. His judgment has damaged us. The investors want stability." A quiet shock rippled through me. It wasn't revenge, not exactly. It was consequence. Not because of me, but because of choices they made long before I ever filed a patent claim. Margaret leaned forward. "We're giving you first right of refusal. Not employment, independence. A partnership contract. High compensation. Full creative authority. No reporting to executives. No politics. Just innovation." She was offering me something far more dangerous than revenge, a chance to reshape the very company that once tried to bury me. For a moment, I imagined it, walking back into those halls not as an employee but as someone they depended on. Someone untouchable. Someone who couldn't be dismissed or belittled or stolen from. But then I imagined something else, waking up every morning to build something new with a team that trusted me, respected me, and chose me long before anyone else did. I pushed the folder back toward her. "I appreciate the offer," I said gently. "But I've already chosen my future. And it isn't in fixing other people's mistakes." Margaret nodded, not surprised. "That's what I thought you'd say." As she stood to leave, she paused and added, "For what it's worth, you were the spark that exposed everything. You didn't just reclaim your work, you saved the company from itself." I watched her walk away, the folder tucked under her arm like unfinished business. For them, it was the end of an era. For me, it was simply closure. When I returned to my new office, the one with the wide windows and a view of the city, I found my team crowded around a monitor, celebrating. Our launch numbers had doubled projections. Investors were requesting meetings. The industry praised the technology as groundbreaking. I stepped into the room, and they broke into smiles. "You did it," one of them said. "No," I corrected softly. "We did it." Later that night, as the city lights flickered and the office emptied, I stood alone by the window. I wasn't thinking about Daniel, or the CEO, or the company that had underestimated me. They were chapters one had already closed. I thought about the younger version of myself, the one who stayed quiet in meetings, who accepted crumbs of credit, who believed loyalty would eventually be rewarded. He was gone. Replaced by someone who had learned the hardest truth of all: sometimes revenge isn't a strike. Sometimes it's simply walking away, and watching everything you deserved finally walk toward you. And this time, I stepped forward to meet it. But the real sting came a week later, during a company-wide meeting. The owner, Mr. Carver, stood proudly on stage, his son beside him like a prince awaiting his crown. "And now," the owner announced, "I want to recognize the breakthrough innovation that will shape the next era of our company's products. Developed," he paused, smiling at his son, "by Ethan." The room erupted in applause. Cameras flashed. Ethan stepped forward, accepting the praise with a grin so smug it could have cracked the ceiling. I sat in the audience, clapping mechanically, my jaw tight. I watched my work, my months of sleepless nights, dress itself in someone else's suit. I watched my idea be stripped of its identity. The betrayal tasted metallic, bitter, and unforgettable. After the ceremony ended, Ethan swaggered toward me. "You look upset," he said with a smirk. "Don't worry. You'll get your little participation credit somewhere on the internal doc." He patted my shoulder as if consoling a child. Innovation just isn't for everyone. That was the moment something in me snapped, not in anger, but in clarity. Because he didn't know the one thing that mattered most. He didn't know the envelope in my home desk drawer. He didn't know the notarized timestamp. He didn't know the legal filings I had completed months before this project ever reached his eager, grabbing hands. He didn't know the patent was already mine. And as the company began to promote his invention, rolling out press releases and setting schedules for investor showcases, I simply watched. Quietly. Patiently. Almost with pity. The downfall of a thief doesn't require force. Only timing. The downfall of a thief doesn't require force. Only timing. And the moment arrived sooner than anyone expected. 2 days before the investor showcase, the company received a thick envelope via courier, hand-delivered, stamped, and legally binding. Inside was my patent, my proof, and an official cease and desist warning the company that any attempt to present or commercialize my innovation would result in immediate litigation. I knew the exact moment they opened it. The office, usually buzzing with noise, fell completely silent. Meetings were abruptly canceled. Executives hurried down hallways, whispering urgently. Ethan disappeared from sight, leaving behind only his framed visionary posters staring blankly from the walls. By noon, I received a call from the CEO himself. By 2, a meeting request from the board. By 3, a desperate message from Ethan: "We need to talk. Please." But there was nothing left to talk about. I had already moved on. The company held an emergency board meeting that evening. Investors dialed in demanding answers. Legal teams scrambled to understand how they had missed such a critical detail. And there, in the middle of it all, sat Ethan, shoulders slumped, jaw tight, realizing the empire he'd tried to build on lies was collapsing brick by brick. The CEO tried to shift the blame. The board refused to accept it. And the truth landed like a hammer: they had built their entire future on stolen ground. The next morning, the news was leaked internally: the showcase was canceled. Ethan was removed from the innovation initiative. The company was under legal review. By noon, word spread that he had been quietly suspended pending investigation. For a man who grew up believing rules didn't apply to him, it was the first time reality had ever hit him head-on. He tried calling again that evening. I ignored it. Not out of pettiness, but because the story no longer belonged to him. It belonged to me, and to the truth that had finally come to light. The next week, I signed a deal with a new company that valued my vision from day one. We launched the product under my name, legally and proudly. Investors flocked. Articles highlighted the innovation as revolutionary. And for the first time, I felt the weight of my work rest entirely in my own hands. Years of silence, of being overlooked, of swallowing frustration, all erased by one simple fact: I had protected what mattered. Months later, as I walked into a conference hall to speak about intellectual property and innovation ethics, I caught a glimpse of a familiar face in the crowd: Ethan. He didn't approach me. Didn't smirk. Didn't pretend. He just sat quietly in the back row, eyes lowered, understanding the one truth he had tried so hard to avoid: you can steal credit. You can steal applause. You can even steal the spotlight. But you can't steal what you never built. And you can't outrun the moment the truth catches up. My story didn't end with revenge. It ended with recognition, the kind that no one could take from me ever again. And as I stepped onto the stage, greeted by applause that finally belonged to me, I realized something: the best revenge isn't payback. It's becoming everything they said you couldn't be.